Honey, let me tell you, Dave Chappelle just stepped in the room. Now you know Dave, when he talks, and Dave have a white audience. For Dave to say something about racism in Mississippi, you know it's real, honey. They got Dave Chappelle talking about racism and how this applies to Nolan Wells' case in Mississippi. You guys have to see how this video breaks it down, baby. Okay? I want to know your thoughts about this. I want to roll this clip. Let's react to it. Let's keep Nolan Wells in the algorithm. I need you guys to comment, share, and let me know, was Dave Chappelle right? What he have to say about racism when it comes to Mississippi and this Nolan Wells case? Did he see it coming before it actually came?
Now me and Chip are driving. Now I'm not driving. Chip is driving, and he's driving a little crazy. He's been drinking. Then the police seen us and pulled us over. Now you understand, I'm scared as shit. I mean, come on, the car smells like weed.
Over 20 years ago, comedian Dave Chappelle dropped a classic joke about the white privilege card when dealing with the police. Back then, the whole world laughed. But today, looking at the Nolan Wells case, that joke isn't funny anymore. It has turned into a chilling prophecy. Nolan Wells was an 18-year-old black man in Mississippi with big dreams and a bright future. That night, Nolan went out to a secluded island with a group of friends, most of them white. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. Days later, Nolan's body washed ashore. His family was devastated and the community was outraged. Despite countless contradictions in the witness statements, the local sheriff quickly concluded it was just an accident. That strange apathy sparked a wave of anger. Could systemic bias in the justice system be covering up the truth? Why does a stand-up comedy routine from years ago mirror a case currently shaking Mississippi? Join me as we dive deep into every detail, break down every statement, and uncover the dark side behind this shocking story. A disjointed trip and a web of lies. Nolan Wells stepped into his 18th year with all the confidence and hope of a young man on the threshold of life. A full university scholarship was not only a reward for his relentless hard work, but also his ticket beyond the narrow stereotypes of a small southern town. In the eyes of his family and friends, Nolan represented a new generation educated for giving and always seeing the world through a positive lens. He held a firm belief that the era of hateful prejudice was long gone, and that genuine friendship could easily transcend race. It was that very trust that led Nolan to agree to a weekend picnic trip to a remote island in the middle of the Mississippi River with a group of white classmates. To Nolan, this was more than just a casual outing. It was a milestone of belonging, proof that he truly was part of the group. He proudly shared his excitement with his family before getting into the car, leaving home with a bright smile and an open heart. As night fell, the island nestled in the churning currents became completely cut off from the outside world. No streetlights, no stable cell service, just the rustle of the wind and the rushing water. According to later records, the period between 11:00 p.m. and 3:00 a.m. remains a complete mystery. What really happened around that campfire that night? The initial statements from the friends were vague at best. They claimed they were all drinking, chatting, and eventually went their separate ways, late at night. No one could explain why Nolan would leave the campsite alone, nor could anyone account for the unusual noises that a few residents on the opposite shore vaguely heard in the night. Those 4 hours of silence became a complete black hole of information, concealing everything that led to the 18-year-old's disappearance. The shocking apathy of the sheriff's office. Just a few days after the news of Nolan's disappearance broke, his body washed ashore, bringing deep shock and overwhelming grief to the Wells family. However, the response from the local sheriff's office, led by Sheriff Charles Stevens, left the public moving from disbelief to pure outrage. As soon as the discovery was reported, instead of immediately sealing off the crime scene, impounding the vehicles, and conducting a comprehensive autopsy, authorities rushed to an extraordinarily quick initial conclusion: an accidental fall due to substance use. Not a single detention order was issued for the individuals who were with Nolan that night. Not a single in-depth interrogation was conducted under forensic supervision. The preliminary report was put together carelessly, as if local authorities were eager to brush the entire matter under the rug to protect the town's peaceful image. Refusing to accept the absurdity of the authorities' quick conclusion, Nolan's father, Marcus Wells, a military veteran, decided to seek the truth himself. Using his background in observation and driven by the unwavering resolve of a grieving father, he waded through muddy waters and personally searched every inch of the private beach area where the pontoon boat had docked. That was when the wall of lies began to crumble. Hidden beneath a pile of dry leaves in the brush yards away from the water's edge, Marcus found Nolan's cell phone. The phone was not at the bottom of the river, contradicting the initial claims made by Chip Vance and the group that Nolan dropped his phone in the water when he fell. Even more alarming, the phone's outer casing was completely shattered by heavy blunt force, not water pressure or natural impact. This physical evidence shattered the police's superficial report. It clearly proved human intervention. Someone had deliberately destroyed the device to eliminate data or cover up an action before the victim washed ashore. The discovery of the phone immediately sparked a painful question throughout the community. Would this investigation have unfolded the same way if the roles were reversed? If the victim had been a wealthy white youth and the individuals on that island were a group of black teenagers? Would Sheriff Stevens have rushed to rule it an accident within hours? Would those present have been allowed to return home, freely carry on as usual, and even appear on entertainment podcasts during the very week of the victim's funeral? This glaring double standard was not merely a procedural oversight. It exposed a deep-seated bias woven into the local justice system, where the thoroughness of an investigation still seems dictated by social status and skin color. Chip's white card and Dave Chappelle's prophecy. In 2000 on stage for his classic HBO stand-up special, Killing Them Softly, comedian Dave Chappelle delivered a story that was both hilarious and deeply satirical. In the bit, Chappelle recalls riding in a car with his white friend named Chip. It was the textbook recipe for a criminal arrest. Chip was driving completely drunk, speeding recklessly, and the car was filled with the smell of marijuana. For any black man in that situation, including Chappelle himself, it was a terrifying nightmare, a scenario that could lead to immediate arrest or worse violence from law enforcement. Yet Chip's reaction defied all expectations. When the police sirens flashed behind them, Chip didn't panic. He didn't even bother to turn down the radio. As the officer approached the driver's side window, instead of feeling anxious or shaking, Chip looked at the officer with total composure and dropped a line that went down in stand-up history. "Sorry, officer, I didn't know I couldn't do that." In response, the officer simply nodded politely. "Well, now you know? Get out of here." What gave Dave Chappelle's comedy its punch wasn't fiction, but the brutally honest portrayal of Chip's mindset. Chip's nonchalance wasn't born out of pure stupidity or innocence. It stemmed from a subconscious belief deeply rooted within him, the belief that the justice system, the law, and the police existed to protect him, not to punish or intimidate him. Chip carried the unshakable confidence of white privilege. He had never experienced being viewed as a suspect simply because of his appearance, nor had he ever needed to learn how to keep both hands on the steering wheel and watch every word to survive an encounter with the police. The phrase, "I didn't know I couldn't do that," became a special code, an appeal for leniency that the justice system readily accepts for privileged individuals. Stepping off the comedy stage and looking at the reality of the Nolan Wells case in Mississippi, the resemblance between the fictional Chip and the group accompanying Nolan is startling. After that tragic night on the secluded island, while the Wells family lived through unbearable heartbreak and fought to uncover every piece of evidence, the group of white friends who were with Nolan remained entirely free to live their lives. Their statements were riddled with glaring contradictions and inconsistencies, yet they were never detained, never subjected to high-pressure interrogations, and never treated as criminal suspects. That indifference reached its peak when members of the group casually appeared on entertainment podcasts. On air, rather than expressing remorse or deep grief over the loss of their friend, They cast themselves as victims of rumors and targets of cyberbullying. They complained about their privacy being invaded, much like how the character Chip viewed being pulled over by the police as nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Once again, systemic empathy automatically shielded them, allowing them to carry on with their lives while a young man's death remained unsolved. Cron's Law and Order. Sketch on Chappelle's show. Dave Chappelle's sharp ability to dissect the true nature of the justice system reached new heights on Chappelle's show with his famous Tron's Law and Order sketch. In this segment, Chappelle crafts an intensely satirical role reversal scenario. Tron, a black drug dealer, is placed in the position of a powerful white businessman entangled in financial crimes, and vice versa. When questioned about his case by investigator Charles Stevens, Tron nonchalantly responds with ultimate arrogance. "How about I drop by the station to turn myself in around next Tuesday week? Cool." The officer immediately nods and profusely thanks him for his cooperation. When the trial arrives, instead of facing a typical life sentence, Tron stands before the court, interrupts the judge, and congratulates the jury on making a wise decision. Ultimately, Tron walks out of the courtroom a free man, while the white subject receives a heavy sentence for minor offenses. The Tron's Law and Order sketch wasn't just a comedic bit. It was a condensed sociological analysis wrapped in comedy. Chappelle exposed how the justice system creates legal exit ramps for individuals with wealth and privilege. These exit ramps include the right to bail and complete freedom of movement throughout the investigation, access to media channels to shape a favorable public narrative, lenience from judges and juries who share similar backgrounds and social perspectives. In Nolan Wells's case, the fact that Chip Vance and his group remained free without face-to-face detentions or rigorous interrogation serves as a living reflection of Chappelle's sketch. The protective wall surrounding them was built not only by the Vance family's wealth, but by a judicial system programmed to favor people like them. The laughter from the Chappelle's show stage in 2003, when reflected against real-world events, turns into a bitter, scathing indictment of ongoing inequality. The cold statistics of the justice system. The gravity of Nolan Wells' case lies not only in isolated criminal details, but in how it mirrors cold, hard statistics within the American judicial system. According to research reports from the National Registry of Exonerations, Black Americans are 7 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted of serious crimes than white Americans. In cases involving drug offenses or public order violations, search arrest and prosecution rates for Black individuals remain disproportionately higher. Despite similar rate of usage across demographics, these figures prove a harsh reality. Inequality before the law is not a matter of perception, but a quantitative fact documented over decades. Systemic bias does not require every officer or judge to harbor overt personal prejudice. Its operational nature is far more subtle. It is an automated mechanism that allocates suspicion and empathy. When a privileged white suspect like Chip Vance gets into trouble, the system tends to view them through a lens of tolerance. Their actions are framed as youthful mistakes, unfortunate accidents, or unforeseen mishaps. Law enforcement automatically extends them the benefit of the doubt, prioritizing the protection of their future. Conversely, when the victim or suspect is Black, the system far more easily accepts disadvantageous assumptions. In the Nolan Wells case, the police chief's rushed accidental ruling exemplifies a system automatically attributing carelessness to the victim, closing the file quickly without ever digging into the truth behind what happened. The legacy of Paul Mooney and street knowledge. Mooney pointed out that when a white suspect faces serious allegations, the legal system and the public almost instantly trigger a mechanism to find a reason to understand. Excuses like sleepwalking, psychological distress, life pressure, or a temporary lapse in judgment are quickly brought forward as defense narratives. Courts and news outlets readily view them as troubled individuals who need research treatment and sympathy rather than criminal accountability. Conversely, when the suspect is black, a default mechanism of suspicion kicks in immediately. The system does not bother looking into psychological root causes or background circumstances. Empathy is completely erased, replaced by severe sentences and instant public condemnation. Placing Paul Mooney's perspective alongside the way local authorities and media handled Nolan Wells's white companions reveals the exact playbook Mooney warned about. From the very beginning, the group that accompanied Nolan was approached with an astonishing level of leniency. When their statements revealed glaring inconsistencies, officials did not view them as signs of deception or a cover-up. Instead, they framed them as panic among young adults or confusion caused by alcohol. The individuals in question were given room to paint themselves as victims of the chaotic fallout innocent youths dragged into an unforeseen tragedy. They were free to appear on podcasts to vindicate themselves, sharing the emotional strain they were enduring. Meanwhile, the deep grief and search for truth pursued by Nolan Wells's family were painted as overreacting or complicating the situation. Once again, the system's empathy was lopsidedly distributed, shielding those with privilege while pushing the actual victims of tragedy to the margins. The Special 846, and silence does not mean complicity. In his 2020 Special 846, Dave Chappelle delivered a scathing response to journalist Don Lemon, who had publicly criticized black entertainment stars for their silence during the initial outbreak of protests following the death of George Floyd. Chappelle bluntly stated that artists or celebrities not speaking out immediately on television does not make them complicit or indifferent to injustice. He emphasized, "Don't ask where the celebrities are. This is not a time for celebrities. This is a time for the streets to speak." Chappelle understood that the true power of a movement demanding justice doesn't come from polished statements by the entertainment industry, but from the spontaneous awakening and outrage of the community itself, the very people who witness and endure injustice every single day. The principle: the streets talk first, which Chappelle highlighted in 846, played out precisely in Nolan Wells's case in Mississippi. The struggle didn't begin with statements from politicians or official press conferences. It erupted the moment the first photo of Nolan's trip to the island with his white companions began circulating on social media. Local residents and the online community immediately spotted the irregularities that police had seemingly chosen to overlook. Independent journalists like John Abba and social media accounts run by everyday citizens were the first to raise questions about the smashed phone, the unaccounted hours during the night, and the privilege being enjoyed by Nolan's companions. It was this voice from the street that created immense pressure, forcing major media outlets to step in and shattering local authorities' attempt to quietly shut down the case. The initial silence of prominent figures could not extinguish the fire for justice, because once a community sees the nature of a lie, their collective voice becomes the most powerful force aimed directly at the dark corners of the Mississippi legal system. A political battlefield and buried truths. As Nolan Wells's case expanded beyond local boundaries and exploded into a nationwide media debate, the focus rapidly shifted from a criminal investigation to a political and PR crisis. Facing mounting pressure from online public opinion and human rights watchdogs, the response from Mississippi state officials drew sharp attention from observers. In official statements to the press, Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves publicly expressed his views on the involvement of outside figures in the case. Rather than addressing the technical contradictions in the local sheriff's office preliminary report, the governor focused his criticism on prominent civil rights attorneys and social activists such as Benjamin Crump and Reverend Al Sharpton. State officials alleged that the appearance of these activists was intentionally stoking race issues and driving division within the community to capture national media attention. The narrative pushed by authorities was that the local legal process was operating independently, and bringing complex social commentary into the case only added unnecessary tension between the parties involved. From the perspective of media and sociology analysts, the local government's response represented a common tactic attempting to apply a colorblind narrative to the judicial process. By asserting that skin color or social context were irrelevant to the case, officials sought to project an image of neutrality, framing the law as being applied equally to all citizens without bias. The marginalized grief of the victim's family. In stark contrast to the strong media access enjoyed by the companions on the boat, Marcus Wells, Nolan's father, and a military veteran faced the uphill battle of seeking answers from an extremely vulnerable position. His grief over losing his son was frequently overshadowed by loud political debates between state officials and advocacy groups. New evidence discovered by Marcus himself, such as a smashed cell phone found in the bushes, was at times met with skepticism by authorities dismissed as the emotional speculation of a grieving father. While individuals under scrutiny had opportunities to voice their side regarding public pressure on podcast platforms, the victim's family struggled endlessly just to keep their son's case from being buried beneath the daily news cycle. The clash between authorities, the media, and the victim's family in the Nolan Wells case extends far beyond a personal tragedy. It stands as a textbook example, highlighted by analysts to illustrate how, when a case turns into a political and media battleground objective, truth is easily obscured by institutional self-preservation and calculated public relations strategies. The classic sketches featuring the privileged Chip character or the harsh role reversals in the legal system that Chappelle showcased on stage over 2 decades ago might have seemed like exaggerated satire at the time. Yet when placed side by side with the real-world developments of Nolan Wells's case in Mississippi, yesterday's mockery turns into a scathing indictment. It proves that the systemic injustices warned about in satire are not fictional. They are a stark reality operating quietly in real life. The case of Nolan Wells, an 18-year-old whose dreams were cut short beneath the waters of Mississippi, has grown beyond a local police file. It stands as a painful test of transparency, impartiality, and public trust in modern law enforcement in the 21st century.
When an investigation is shrouded in rushed conclusions, vital physical evidence is ignored and glaring disparities in treatment between parties unfold before media lenses, the justice system puts its own credibility on trial. This case serves as a stark reminder justice cannot merely exist as a concept on paper or as eloquent statements at press conferences. Justice must be demonstrated through action by uncovering the smallest clues and confronting every conflicting statement.
Regardless of who the victim is, or how much wealth, status, and power those under suspicion possess.
The full truth behind that isolated island trip that night remains an unanswered question, and the journey to find answers for Nolan Wells continues driven by the power of media awareness and the relentless persistence of his family. Family, what is your perspective on this case? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and hit like on this video so you never miss our latest investigative deep dives and media breakdowns.
Some opinions expressed in this video may be subjective and reflect the content creator's perspective at the time of production. They should not be interpreted as objective facts or official positions. From the stage to the big screen, their influence is undeniable. Thank you for watching this tribute. If you enjoyed this walk through history, leave a like and subscribe to the Silent Legends archives. This video specifically recommended for you reveals a truth that few people talk about. Watch it now to see the full picture. Take care of yourselves